Just here. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador's Tourism Awareness Month learning events. For those that do not know me, I'm Juanita Ford, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador. And thanks for joining us this afternoon. Before we get started, I want to respectfully acknowledge the province of Newfoundland and Labrador as the ancestral homelands of many diverse populations of Indigenous people who have contributed to 9,000 years of history, including the Beothuk on the island of Newfoundland. Today, this province is home to diverse populations of Indigenous people. We also acknowledge and respect the diverse histories and cultures of the Mi'kmaq, Innu, and Inuit. I'm happy to introduce Christina Miranda this afternoon from Red Point. She's joining us all the way from New York City, and she's coming here to give you some social media tips. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Christina and let her take you through the afternoon.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Good to see all of you. I see so many faces that I recognize. It's so good to see everybody. But just in a second, I'm going to actually share my screen, which means I'm not going to be able to see all of you anymore. But I'm going to pretend that I can, since I recognize so many smiling faces. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to share my screen here so everybody can see the presentation. Okay, so can everybody see the screen? Anybody, like, if you can't, somebody say something.
It's all good.
Thanks, Juanita. All right, good. So here we are talking about social media tips for tourism. And we have a lot to cover today. Those of you who have been in some of my sessions before know that I tend to talk a little bit on the fast side, which works really well in Newfoundland and Labrador. So hopefully it's not going to be too overwhelming for all of you. But we do have a lot to cover today, and we're coming at this from an angle that I think is going to be really useful for you. So let's jump in for a second and see how we get started. So you guys, I do know a lot of you, but I don't know all of you who are on here, and I don't know that we've had a chance to meet at any of the different HML conferences that I've been to in the past. So I just thought I would take a second and share who I am and what I know in terms of how it can be useful for you regarding social media today. So as you can see from this picture, I've been to Newfoundland. I've been to Newfoundland a bunch of times. I haven't made it up to Labrador yet, but I've had so many great encounters with Labradorians at all the various conferences. So I've gotten a chance to meet a lot of you and be in a lot of your destinations, which has really endeared me to all of you guys. So I'm fairly familiar with the province. I think many of you also know that Red Point, my company, does PR for Atlantic Canada, for the Atlantic Canada Agreement on Tourism. So we represent Newfoundland and Labrador in the US market. So we're, again, as an agency, we're pretty familiar with you all. But I personally have had a lot of boots on the ground in the province. And in addition to what we do for Atlantic Canada, we do marketing on a global level for clients in tourism, exclusively in tourism and travel. So destinations and hotels and attractions and tour companies. And so my experience is 30 years. I've been doing this for 30 years, and certainly a lot of social media in the last 10 to 15 years. And so I'm going to try to boil a lot of that stuff down for you guys today based on some of the stuff that HNL had asked me to share, and then also some things that I think would be useful for you based on what I know of your different social media accounts and all of your different operations, which I've become familiar with over the last 5 or 6 years since I've gotten to know you guys a lot better. So social media is a really meaty subject. And when I sat down to think about what I can really share in 2 hours that will be truly useful for you, that's a tough sell right there, because it's a lot, and there's a lot of different things that can be covered. And the interesting thing about social media, and I'm sure you all are experiencing this as well, is that everybody has a different skill level regarding social media. And everybody also has an opinion on how social media could be done. So you might You might have a personal Facebook page, and then you're given the responsibility to manage the Facebook page of the company that you work for, the business you work for. And that's not the same thing. Using social media for personal is 100% different than using it for your business purposes. And so, trying to boil that down into something that will be useful for you is tough. Plus the fact that you are also different. So just even on this call alone, we have cultural attractions, which originally we had, thought that we were going to. In fact, I think the session is called on one of the sessions. It's called social media for cultural attractions. But as more and more different types of businesses started registering for this seminar, we knew we really needed to open up the content so that it was applicable to everyone. Because one of the things you're really going to learn here today is that doing social media is different depending on the type of business you are and the type of goal that you're looking to achieve. So with cultural attractions and accommodations, and we have some culinary folks on here and destinations, and then there's a lot of organizations that don't fall into any one of those buckets. You're all so different, so it makes putting the same type of content together to teach you a little bit challenging. However, there is one thing that all of you have in common, which is the need to understand the opportunities and the limitations of social media so that you can make some wise choices in your own efforts. So how you evaluate and how you look at things, those kinds of things you all have in common. What you ultimately do and what your results are and what types of tactics you do will differ, but how you approach it and how you think about it will all be the same. So that's kind of the way we're going to look at this today. One big fact that's important for everybody to kind of embrace today is even if you've already been doing social media for your business or for your organization for a while, it doesn't mean that you learned how to do it from the ground up. So for example, you can drive a car without knowing how to fix a car, without knowing the ins and outs of how an engine works or how it works mechanically. So I'm going to cover some of the things as if everyone is a newbie. And for those of you who've been doing social media for a while, it's worth it to go back to those basics, I promise you, because it really sets the foundation for a lot of the other topics that we're going to cover today. So here's what we're going to do, and I applaud all of you for signing up for a 2-hour seminar virtually. So that's a lot to sit through. Today's agenda, we're going to start sort of part one is the differences among the key social channels, the key obstacles that are faced when you're managing social channels, how to choose the right channels for you, how to cultivate success on your channels, and then what I like to call the secret sauce, which is how to make sure that all of this becomes a success. So we're going to get through part one, and then we're going to pause for some questions and take a quick stretch break. You go to the washroom, refill your drink, get a glass of wine or whatever it is you want to do. And then we're going to go into the part two of the session, which I think is really going to be super useful for all of you. And it really is going to wrap up a lot of the stuff we talked about in part one so that you can understand. We're going to actually do some examples. We're going to review 3 different businesses of participants who are on this call, 1 cultural attraction, 1 accommodation, and 1 DMO. And I'm going to walk you through my assessment of how I think they can make the most social media given their situation, given the type of organization they are. Even if I'm not using your business as the example, everyone's going to be able to learn from it because the focus is on how to make choices based on each individual situation. And you're going to be able to see how those choices will differ dramatically based on the business's circumstance. And you'll be able to take a lot of what I share for some of those different businesses and apply them to your own situation, and at least in some way give you a better handle on how to think about these things and what questions you need to be asking yourself and how you should be setting these things up for success. So before we get started, I just want to let everybody know, please do write down your questions or type them in the chat if you want. And then after part one and after part two, I'll save a little time so that I can answer questions during that time. There is really no need to scribble notes fast or type notes really fast if you're typing. We're going to email this deck to you after the session is over. I do share, I think many of you know, if you've been to my sessions before, I share a lot of information that's not written on the slides, but all the checklists and all the summary information and all that stuff is going to be there for you. So at least from a big picture perspective, you'll have everything in front of you with this stuff. Okay, so getting started. I hope you're all ready. I can't see you, so I hope everybody's ready to go. So differences among the key social media channels, and this is really going back to basics, but it's an important thing for us to cover. All the channels are super different. And that's part of the problem, is that everybody, if you're not in this business, you don't do marketing for a living, you don't do social media for a living, you think of social media as one big thing, like it's a thing. But it's not actually. Each one of the channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, like they're all so different that you can't think of them collectively as one similar thing. So with each one, like different people use them. The purpose of them, how they originally got started, and therefore how they work today is very different. The type of information that you should be sharing on them is going to be different for each channel. Tools that you need to prepare and properly manage each channel are going to be different depending on the channel. Every channel is different in terms of how easy it is for people to share information, which when you think about social media, one of the reasons businesses like it is because it gives people, regular consumers, regular guests, regular visitors, the opportunity to share your story with other people in more of an exponential fashion. But that's not the case with every single social media channel. So it's something to take into consideration. And then with every social media channel, there are going to be limitations and opportunities that you need to factor in as you develop your plan and start moving forward. One thing that they all have in common is they all have a spectrum, right? So in terms of the things that you could do, you could here use the bare minimum of options that are available in terms of marketing on social media, or the other side of the spectrum is using every possible feature that you can. Now, most people, most businesses, to be honest, barely get to here. This is as far as you go in that spectrum. I think it's likely that every single person on this seminar, every attendee of this seminar is there. Most of the businesses that we work with are there. If you're Nike Sports, you're probably here, but you're talking about a very, very big company, a global organization that has lots of people doing their social media and trying to connect with a lot of different potential clients, potential customers in various ways on various channels. Now, size does not necessarily mean that you can go further along the spectrum, because we work, for example, we work with a client that is a small inn in Vermont, tiny inn, husband and wife owned. They have 2 staff. They're really small. They use about this much of social media. We also work with a tour company that has a marketing department of 25 people, and they use about this much. They don't use much more than that either. So I'm sharing this because you all and most of the people on this call are probably do-it-yourselfers, and you feel a lot of pressure, like you should be doing a lot on social media, or you should be using a lot of different features. And while using a lot of the different features is good, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't get a good return on your investment for social media if you don't use all of those things. So I'm absolving you to release yourself from the pressure of feeling like you need to use a lot. And one of the things I'm going to be recommending today is, how do you find your sweet spot on this spectrum? And part of that is really understanding your time available and making sure you're not trying to do too many things on too many channels. But we'll cover that. So I think everybody here pretty much is familiar with the biggies. We have Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, which we're going to cover these in significant amount today. And then over here we have YouTube, which a lot of people do not think of as a social channel. It's more like a place where you put videos. YouTube is actually one of those powerful social media marketing channels where you can market to people and get subscribers and have interaction with people and things like that. It's just that not a lot of brands, small brands, not a lot of small businesses use that. TikTok, you guys have probably heard a lot about, especially when sea shanties on TikTok were popular. But TikTok is really a video sharing site as well. And so it's definitely designed, and it's designed for these short bursts of videos. Brands definitely have an opportunity to play on TikTok and coordinate with people and try to interact with people. It's not the kind of channel that you would do if you're trying to reach the, say, over 50 market, right? TikTok is typically a younger demographic. We've got Snapchat over here, which is also a younger demographic. And that just does videos. It's like for video sharing, that videos that disappear in 24 hours. So it's a very specific type of channel. LinkedIn, which many of you I'm sure have heard of, it's traditionally more of a business networking site, but it actually is a very robust social media channel. And there's some great marketing opportunities on LinkedIn as well. So we're not going to cover that in detail here today, but I would definitely have been remiss if I didn't mention it. And then the last one down here, which a lot of people are probably familiar with, is Pinterest, which is really like, think of a bulletin board. Like if you had a bulletin board in your house and you ripped out pages from magazines of things that you liked and you pinned them to the bulletin board of things you wanted to remember and go back to another time. That's kind of like what Pinterest is online. So those are the major ones. And what we're going to do today is really look at what I would say is your three biggies, which in Newfoundland and Labrador, and certainly Atlantic Canada, is really Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But first, before we do that, we need to discuss algorithms, which if any of you just rolled your eyes when I said algorithms, I'm so sorry, because most of you think you left words like that behind when you graduated school. And it's just an annoying term that sounds like math, and not a lot of people who go into tourism love math. You like people, and you know, that's kind of the way that goes. But algorithms are important. And before we proceed with all of the stuff we're going to talk about today, we need to be sure everyone understands what they are and why they are relevant to this session, because algorithms play a very big role in social media marketing. If you don't understand what they are, you're going to be wondering why some of the things you're trying to do are not working. So in social media, an algorithm is a method that channels use in order to select which content they're going to show to users in their feed. So yes, you're reading that correctly. That means that even if someone likes or follows you, it doesn't mean they're actually going to see your stuff. The channel chooses what gets shown to people based on their own interactions and how popular or engaging a post is. So what do I mean by that? So let's say, for example, I like Go Western Newfoundland on Facebook, which I do. And they do a bunch of posts, and I see their posts in my feed. If I don't interact with their posts on a regular basis, like every once in a while, like something or comment on something or share something, over time, what's going to happen is Facebook's going to say, she doesn't really interact with the Western Newfoundland that much, so she probably isn't that interested in them. So we're going to just not show her every post. Maybe they'll show me every other post, or they'll show me every third post. So that's one thing, is me not interacting with it. On the flip side, I may not interact with Go Western Newfoundland over time, like after a while, but they could do a post that lots of people interact with. They get a lot of engagement, a lot of people liking it, a lot of people commenting on it. And then what will happen is Facebook will say, this post looks pretty interesting, so let me show it to more people. So Chris hasn't interacted with them in a while, but let me show this to her because this one looks like it's so popular. I should share that with her. I like Facebook as a person. But anyway, Facebook would share that with me. So those are ways that the algorithm works. And it's in some ways, for a social media marketer, it's pretty depressing because you just feel like you're posting a lot and maybe not everybody is seeing it. But this is one of the reasons why producing good content, like good, interesting content, is really important, because if the content is good and interesting, like you could do 2 really amazing posts a week that get a lot of engagement, and that would be better for your algorithm than posting 6 posts a week that nobody interacts with, right? It's just better for the algorithm. So it's important to know about the algorithm. And I guess I get asked a lot, why do social media channels use an algorithm? Because it's just annoying. The first reason is volume. If you're a person that has 1,000 friends on Facebook and you like 100 brands and all of them post daily, your feed is going to be overwhelming. You're not going to be able to see everything that people are sharing or that brands are sharing. So over time, the Facebook and the other channels as well weed stuff out that they feel is important to you based on those posts that you interact with. And that's supposed to make your feed a lot more manageable for you to be able to see things. Otherwise, if you don't look at your Facebook for a couple of days and then you go in, you're going to be scrolling through posts for about a month before you're able to see all the posts that were there. The second reason is profit. Businesses, I mean, the social media channels are not stupid. You don't pay as a person to have a Facebook account or to have an Instagram account. The way they make money is through ads. So businesses will pay to increase their reach beyond what occurs naturally, and then it forces the news into people's feed. So that's a big reason for Facebook and Instagram and Twitter for wanting to have an algorithm, because they want to make brands pay in order to be able to reach more people, which, that's what makes the world go around, guys. Okay, so we covered algorithms. So now let's look at your 3 biggies. So for each one of these, I'm just going to quickly kind of go through who's on them, what's the purpose, so you can understand how these channels really differ, okay? So on Facebook, you're pretty much looking at 18 and up in terms of people who have accounts, but it's really more the 40 to 70 plus crowd who uses it. There is a big difference between people who are on it and people who actually use it, right? So if you want to reach people on Facebook, you're probably targeting the 40 and over crowd, and you're really targeting probably the 55 and over crowd. The purpose of Facebook is that I like to think of it as like social media for the masses. Anybody can use it. And at its core, it was originally designed for people to stay in touch with friends and family, like sharing news updates to a group of people at once. So like before group text came along, right? And you wanted to be able to post pictures and share different things and share videos and stuff like that. 10, 20 or 30 years ago, you had to drop everybody a postcard, or you had to like call them on the phone one at a time and like share. That was like when, three-way calling came around. It was such a big deal. Now we have Facebook, you can share it with 10,000 people with one post. That's really what Facebook was for. Information that works best on Facebook, it's really the most versatile of the social media channels in terms of posting options. You can post videos, you can post photos, you can post text, you can post combos of any of those things. You can do really long posts. You can share website links, and you can share other links. You can easily share other people's and other businesses' posts. Collectively over time on this channel, the type of info that works best is that your posts should feel like an ongoing conversation to your followers. So anytime they drop in, you're kind of continuing, not the same conversational thread, but just it should feel very conversational and like you're talking to them a lot over time. The tools you're going to need if you want to promote on Facebook, first of all, you need a Facebook business account, not a personal account. By now, most of you have, if you got started with personal, most of you transferred over to a business account. That's really important because you want analytics and you want to be able to look at your insights, and eventually you might want to do some advertising, and you can't do any of that stuff with a personal account. So if you're going to be doing social media marketing, you need that business account. You're going to need to have photos ready. You're going to need to have videos. You're going to need to create captions. You're going to need stories to share, which when I say stories, I'm not talking about the technical term for stories like you see on Facebook and Instagram stories. I just mean you need to have things to say, like stories to tell. You're going to need to have all of the handles that you intend to tag often. We're going to get to that a little bit later. And you're going to need time, to monitor and interact with what's going on. The sharing potential here is good on Facebook. Sharing, it's designed for exponential sharing. If people comment or if people use the share button to share your post, that's the whole point of it. Is you want to be able to share with other people. I mean, people will share. And I know if some of you are, doing Facebook and you're really, really annoyed that you did what you thought was a really great post, and you're like, damn it, why isn't anybody sharing this? That's very frustrating, and I feel your pain. But just because they can doesn't mean that they will. And from a limited opportunity standpoint, I think the big one here with Facebook is advertising. It's really a gift and a curse, and the algorithm can be really, really brutal. And that's really just because Facebook really, really wants you to buy advertising as a brand. So, you'll find that over time, your engagement and the amount of people that interact with you get less and less and less. And then if you boost a post or you do some kind of a campaign, the engagement gets a lot higher. And I'm not crazy when I liken this to drugs. It's like you get addicted and then you're like, ooh, I need another hit, so you boom, you start advertising a little bit more, and they get you used to that. So there's a way to do that and manage that and balance that a little bit better. And I'll definitely talk a little bit more about that later today. Okay, Instagram definitely skews younger than Facebook, with under 50 dominating the audience and the 18 to 34 crowd being the highest represented. The purpose of Instagram is really to share visuals. It was originally designed for photos, but videos are now equally favored. In fact, videos are even more popular on Instagram than photos. Not surprising, the info that works best here are photos and videos. Those are the spotlight. The captions are merely there to explain the visuals, right? Like provide context of what is this picture or what is this video? And that's really what it's for, because most people, and if anybody here is on Instagram, you scroll through the feed and you just look at the pictures and you look at the pictures. And then if one interests you, you stop and you read the caption. But otherwise, you're not really looking at the captions. You're mostly just scrolling through and looking at all the pretty pictures in the videos. So the caption is like, it's necessary, but it's not the primary thing that people are looking at when they're on Instagram. So the posts that you do here can be standalones, like it makes sense just by itself, or collectively over time, like Facebook, it could feel like an ongoing conversation to your followers, depending on your overall plan to approach the content. And I have a good example of that later in the second part, when we go over 3 different examples. I have a good example of that will help really help illustrate that. The tools you're going to need if you're on Instagram, you're definitely going to need an Instagram business account for the same reasons I mentioned before on Facebook. You're going to need a lot of photos and videos. You're going to need captions. Here, you'll notice I didn't say hashtags on Facebook, but here you are definitely going to need hashtags. They are essential to Instagram, and they're fluid, meaning it's not like you pick your hashtags once and you're done. They're going to change every time you do a new post. Some of them, there'll be a little core amount that are the same, but a lot of them are going to change over time. You're going to need research to tag other key businesses. This too is essential, and it's fluid. And again, when I go through some examples later, I'll be able to illustrate what that means. And you're going to need some time to monitor and interact. Now, the big difference between Instagram and Facebook is that Instagram is not designed for exponential sharing. Okay, someone is going to have to physically tag someone else in your comments, or they're going to have to use what's called a reposting app, which means they're going to use a special app to take your post and put it onto their feed and then give you the credit for it. And that is a lot to ask of people, because humans are lazy, guys. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a human too, so I'm dissing myself as well, but humans are lazy, and that's a lot to ask of them. Limits and opportunities, you really need to build your own audience here because of those sharing limitations. You're not going to get that exponential audience like you would with Facebook. Linking to other sites is limited unless you use a link share tool. On Instagram, you can only put one link in your bio, and when you're doing posts, you can't put any live links within the post, which many of you know, but probably some of you didn't. So if you want to be able to, and again, I have an example of this later in part 2, if you want to be able to share a few different types of links, then you're going to need to be using a link sharing tool here and attach that to your Instagram account. But if you have jaw-dropping photos, this is going to be a great home for you and as a social media channel. Now, Twitter is really interesting. It's funny, I teach sessions, all over the world, in Atlantic Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador in particular. You guys love your Twitter, and not every destination is as enamored with Twitter as you guys are. And I can't there's no real reason for it. But interestingly, half of users are 30 to 49 and 70% are male. And the reason for that, they say, is because sports and politics are two of the most popular topics on Twitter. And there's a lot of men who follow different accounts on Twitter just for that thing. But more interestingly is that 80% of tweets are generated by only 10% of Twitter users. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of people on Twitter, but only 10% of them are actually doing most of the tweeting. So it's just something to think about in terms of like who's actually using those channels. The purpose of Twitter is to share news. This is less of a conversation and more like the kind of the ticker feed that you see at the bottom of a news broadcast. The information that works best here, because this is how Twitter was designed originally, is for news and announcements. You can post photos and video here, but this is the one channel where just posting a straight up comment or a straight up caption without having any sort of video or photo accompanying it is really acceptable. For the most part, businesses use Twitter for sharing links to more in-depth information about the subject. The tools you're going to need, again, you're going to need a business account on Twitter. You're going to need the handles of all the accounts you're going to tag often. You want to do that so it can inspire people to potentially retweet so they know that you've done something and you've included them. You're going to need research for hashtags you'll use regularly, because hashtags are important on Twitter as well as Instagram. And of course, you're going to need time to tweet and retweet in order to make your feed interesting. Twitter also is fully designed for exponential sharing. The retweets are really easy for people to do, again, even if they're not doing it. And the limits here is pretty clear. I mean, you only get 140 characters per tweet, and that's pretty restrictive. A lot of people get around that by creating what they call threads. So they might do 8 tweets of 140 characters in order to have like one longer conversation. They are arduous to create, and they can also be arduous to read. So, really this channel is best for short nuggets of text. Okay, so that's that. We've covered the 3 biggies. Now let's look at 7 key obstacles that you will face when you're doing social media. And this is especially true for do-it-yourselfers, but it is also true for the people who are, I know we had a couple of people sign up for this who their entire job is to do social media for whatever business they're at, right? They're going to face these things too. They just have a little bit more time available to be able to tackle some of these obstacles, but the obstacles are the same no matter what. So number 1, as I said before, thinking of social media as one thing when it's really individual channels that are all used differently. So you've got to recast your mindset to think not of social media as a category, but really as Facebook or as Instagram or as Twitter. And you have to start thinking of them as individual, very distinct very distinct items. Come on, there we go. Okay, number 2, this is also a biggie, guys. Feeling pressure to use all the channels when just doing one really, really well might be a smarter strategy. And I can't stress this enough, especially given what I said in number 1. This is why you can't think of social media as one big thing, because then you sort of feel it's like overwhelming. There's too many different things to do. There's too many different options, right? If you look at them individually, then you can say to yourself, am I going to use Facebook? Am I going to use Instagram? Am I going to use Twitter? Am I going to use LinkedIn? And then you can like make bite-sized chunks on how to tackle those individual channels, because they all need to be approached differently. So don't feel pressure to use all the channels. It is perfectly acceptable for you to use only one or only 2. And when I give some of the examples later, I'm going to explain a really good way to set that up so that you have some balance and you're not feeling this kind of pressure. Number 3, lack of understanding the mechanics of how each channel works. Now, the mechanics of how each channel works really matters because they are going to help you make really wise, useful choices. So I know like the temptation, because again, we're so funny humans. We're lazy, but we're also super impatient. So it's like, you know, you're given the assignment to start doing Facebook for your brand or start doing Instagram for your brand. And the first thing you do is just like jump right in and start posting without really taking time to really learn, like, what are the ins and outs? What are some of the things I could do? What are the opportunities? Where are some of the pitfalls? You know, where have people gone wrong before? And like learning from other people's mistakes. We tend to just as humans like jump in and start using a channel. And then what happens is a couple of years later, we've been using it the same way out of habit for so long that then we sort of feel silly going back to the drawing board and trying to learn how it properly works. So I'm urging everybody to just get comfy with the fact that if you don't really understand the mechanics of each one of these channels, you should take the time to get to know all the ins and outs of them so that you can use them smarter, right? Number 4 is lack of a plan. Most businesses, I will say even some of the big ones that we work with, don't have a plan. And I know with like marketing consultants, which I am, there's always a lot of eye rolling about, you know, stopping to do a plan before we actually put things in place. But the fact of the matter is doing social media can be overwhelming and time consuming. And when you go to do a post, you know, you have to stop and think about like what you're going to post and do I have the photo and do, you know, and you get caught up in the fact that you don't have all the tools available. You're not sure what you should be posting. You're not sure when you should be posting. And then therefore it makes it a lot harder to do social media, and it makes it not fun. You know, it makes it a chore as opposed to something that you do that has a sort of a positive aspect to it. Your plan doesn't need to be fancy, but I will tell you that without a plan, it's more time consuming and ineffective. And I use the supermarket analogy probably because almost every analogy I use has food involved in some way, as most of you know. You know, if you go into a supermarket without a list, right, you're doing your weekly shopping and you go into the grocery store and you don't have a list. You wander around the store picking various things. You end up taking a lot longer if you're not sure where things are or you're not sure what you should get. And you're like, do I have this at home? Is this in the pantry? Do I need this? You kind of put a bunch of things in your basket. You always end up buying more than you needed. And the whole experience was sort of ineffective and probably more time consuming. Whereas if you had a list, you could go in and just go through all the aisles and pick what you need and put everything in your basket. And, you know, that's a lot quicker and sort of way more efficient. So I always use the supermarket analogy for why a social media plan is so important, because it just makes it significantly more arduous if you don't have kind of a roadmap. And that really is come on, buddy, let's go. That's the whole point of today is, you know, that's what this is all about, is like figuring out what your plan should be. My experience in working with lots of folks on their social media is that most people dislike it because it's annoying to constantly be thinking about what should I post today, you know, and it's the kind of thing that like just when you posted, it's super exciting that you posted it and you don't have to think about it anymore. And then the next day you wake up and you're like, Jesus, I gotta post another one again, you know, so now what am I gonna post? And so having this plan is gonna help alleviate a lot of that. Number 5, lack of self-created tools. This speaks to planning because preparing your tools in advance makes the process smooth and seamless. If you've planned out, like I know these are the photos that I'm going to post over the next couple of weeks, then when it's time to post them, you've got them all ready and you're ready to go. If you don't do that, then when you're like, oh, I should post that picture of whatever, where did I put it again? Is it in my phone? Is it on my desktop? Does my wife have it? Like, who has it? Then you go through all of that. that's part of what makes the social media posting arduous. So trying to make this as smooth and seamless as possible is a really good idea. Number 6, underestimating the amount of time it's going to take to do this properly, and then getting really frustrated when it takes a lot of your time. It's going to take some time, and you have to just accept that, right? It's like if you say you're going to do social media for business, which you need to have, then you need to accept the fact that you have to make time for it, which I know is frustrating to people, but it's just a fact of life. Okay, and number 7 is forgetting that social media is supposed to be social, guys. The social is in the title for a reason. Interaction, responses, tagging other people, sharing stuff is really key. If you set and forget, like I just do a post and then I walk away and I don't look if anybody's commented and I don't answer them back and I don't answer their questions, that's a real problem. We actually worked with, this is not about necessarily being social, but this is part of the reason why set and forget is such a danger. We were doing consulting for another business in Atlantic Canada, not in Newfoundland and Labrador, who they put up their Facebook page and they didn't look at it for a long time. They just put it up there and they never looked at it. They never checked it or whatever. And by the time we went in to do an audit and help recast their social media, they had 80 people who had sent them messages looking for reservations. And I'm sure, they would have capitalized on those had they been looking at those messages, but they didn't. So you have to remember that there is a social aspect to this whole thing. And so you need to really participate in that. A good way to think of it is if you've got a social channel, if you just started Facebook or you're doing Instagram or whatever, is to really think of it like it's your own little newspaper or magazine. And now you need to be publishing content for your readers regularly. But thinking of it like it's a newspaper or magazine is a really good analogy. And I'll use that a couple of times in the examples as we go along. My informed opinion, that's me with my glass, although I don't have round glasses, but that sort of looks like me with my hair up in any case. So my informed opinion is that every tourism business needs to be using at least one social media channel wisely. Notice one is underlined. Even if you're using more than one, you don't need to use them all with the same level of intensity. And understanding that is going to be the key to balancing how well you do each channel and also how much time and how much overwhelmingness you feel in terms of doing your social media. Okay, so we're cruising here. So choosing the right channels for your business. First things first, you may already, people on this session, you may already be on several channels and managing all of them. And here I am just telling you, you don't need to be on all these channels. So relax, okay? It's cool. But should you be devoting the same level of effort to each? So this section is going to help you decide your proper path and whether you're just getting started or you need to maybe prune your existing channel. There's a lot of factors to consider here. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. So a lot of factors to consider here. You need to consider the amount of time you have available, the tools you would have to create to be a part of this channel, like how much effort are you going to need to be putting in your tools, the types of content you need to be sharing. Should you be doing videos? Can you do regular posts? Is it just text? What's the story? And the logistics that are going to take in order to be able to do these channels successfully. But you also need to consider from your audience's perspective what's really important, right? So their demographics, which channel are they on? Which channel are they likely to be on based on their age and their gender, and then also their location, and what are their needs and wants? What do they need to hear from you? What kind of content do they want to hear from you? And do they have a connection with you already? They know you? Have they stayed with you? Have they visited with you? Or are they complete strangers? Who are you trying to talk to? Are you trying to talk to complete strangers, or are you trying to talk to people that have, previously stayed with you or experienced your business in some way? Understanding whether or not those people have a connection will really help you choose the right channels for you. And a big thing here is what is it that you want your audience to do? What's your big picture call to action for that particular channel? And you could want a whole bunch of different things here. You might want people to buy a product of yours. You might want them to buy an experience. Maybe you want them to visit your website. Maybe you want them to share information about you with their friends. You might want them to stay connected to you. Maybe you want them to discover you for the first time. So this isn't about someone staying connected to you who's visited, but maybe you're using social media to find new potential guests or new potential customers. Maybe you're an organization like a DMO, and you, in addition to promoting to consumers, you want your members and the folks in your constituency to see you as some sort of an authority. So that might be a plan that you have for social media. And maybe you want people to visit other websites or socials. Like, again, if you're a DMO, you're going to want to be driving people to other social media channels of the attractions and hotels and restaurants and tour companies, et cetera, that are in your particular region. So they're not always the same. You have to choose the right channels for the goals that you're trying to achieve. And this is the best example I can give, the best analogy I can give for this. You might say, like, I need transportation, and like, what are you going to buy? Well, you don't know. Are you carrying lumber around all day? Are you carrying heavy equipment? Do you live in a city where parking is limited and so you need a smaller car? Do you have a family of 5 and maybe you need a sedan or a van? Or do you only have 1 or 2 people? And if you're a couple and you can have a smaller car? Are you worried about having a footprint, some sort of an ecological, sustainable, environmental footprint? So maybe you're only going back and forth to the market, so you can use a bicycle and then you don't have to worry about it. Maybe price is a factor, right? There's all these different factors that will go into determining what's the best vehicle for your needs. And that is exactly the same thing with social media. If, as an example, okay, just one example, not saying brides to be are only on Pinterest, but like if you want to reach brides to be, Pinterest is a channel that you should be looking at. There's so many people, so many brides are on Pinterest. If you want one all-purpose channel so you can mix up your content, Facebook's right for you. If you want to share, 6, 7, 10, 20 news announcements all day, Twitter's probably right for you. If you want people to buy something, I would say that's mixed. Like, a lot of channels do e-commerce and have good success with e-commerce, but not all of them are set up for that organically. You have to use the right add-on tools. So that's a question. If you want to target meeting planners because your hotel or your destination is looking to book lots of meetings, then you should be looking at LinkedIn for your social media stuff. If you only want to post jaw-dropping photos like an online album, then you should be looking at Instagram. So they all have different uses, and they all have different vibes, and they all have different purposes and different demographics and different people who are on them and use them for different things. I'm just reminding you, those are only from the hip examples. You can reach brides to be on Instagram and you can reach them on Facebook. I'm just giving you one particular example to show how you have to think of it from that way. Like, who do I want to reach and where are they? And then you decide what channel would be the right match for you. Here's your very first consideration, okay? Time, resources. How big is the team that is managing your entire social media effort? How much time collectively can be devoted to nurturing it? And are the people who are doing it interested in it and passionate about it? Or is it a chore to them, which is a complete, like, that influences how good the social media effort is so much. If someone's really into it and they're on social media regularly and they're excited about trying to do things that engage people, and they get excited when a post gets more likes than it normally does, and they try, like, oh, this picture worked well, so I'm going to take a different one like that. And, they're always trying to, like, make it better, and they're really into it. That social media channel is definitely going to be more robust and more successful than one where someone is like, oh, I have to do my 2 obligatory posts a week, and I'm just going to put something up there and I'll put in a caption and, whatever. Social media is definitely designed for the more love you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. So the amount of time that you have, or like I say, make available to manage it, it's going to directly impact how many channels you should be on and where you should be focusing your efforts the most. Just remember that they all have a spectrum. We remember the slide from before. If you try to use too many channels for the amount of time you actually have available to manage those channels, then this nice little arrow that's here, which already is the way down in the bare minimum of options, is now going to be here, because you're trying to do too many channels and you don't have enough time to do any of them justice, okay? So it's 100% true, as I said a moment ago, that your return on investment for your social media is in direct proportion to how much time and love you give it. So if you don't have a lot of time and love to give, then you should just choose one channel that you're going to focus on and do that one really, really well. Here's what you should consider when you're choosing. Who are you trying to reach? Are they locals or are they from away? Are they familiar to you because they've had some experience with you? Or are they complete strangers to you that you're trying to get a new customer base out of? What are their age, gender, and interests? And really, are you more of a luxury type of product or experience, or are you more of a mass market type of experience? There's no set thing. You can't say luxury people are not on Facebook or are not on Twitter. But there are some generalities. A luxury market tends to be more of an Instagram market because of that glossy, gorgeous hero photo video thing. And a lot of times Facebook can get cluttered up with lots of other types of content as well in addition to that. So a lot of times, more luxury travel companies tend to lean more towards Instagram. But that, again, is not a hard and fast rule. You also want to consider, this is a big one, you might need to sit down with like a glass of wine or a beer or something and have a good heart-to-heart with yourself. Why would anyone want to follow you? Like, why would they care? Why do they care? If they're not like your family, or friends, or the guest that comes and stays with you 10 times a year, like, why would anyone want to follow you? Are you giving them news that they need? Are you giving them travel inspiration? Are they in some way staying connected to you after a visit, even just one visit? Are you fun and funny? Because quite frankly, most people are on social media, like with travel companies, because they want to be entertained. It's not like, that's not arduous for them. They're not coming to you to get healthcare news in the latest like COVID situation. They want to be entertained by you. So if you're funny or interesting, that's another reason why somebody would potentially want to follow you. Then the thing is, like, who will realistically follow you? Is it really people who know you, or is it strangers? And this is really important for you to get comfy with who's realistically following you and who's realistically a part of your audience. This is going to drive the choices you make on content to post. And this is also going to drive the marketing choices that you make in terms of how to spend your money and how to spend your time. You might want both groups of people. Like, yeah, of course, I want people who've stayed with us, and I also want to get new people as well. But oh my God, the difference in how you speak to those two groups of people and what you choose to say is dramatic. And here's just one example for that. You saw the moose before, okay? Now, let's say this is being posted on a social media channel for a hotel that's nearby in Newfoundland. And the caption is "Stop for bread." So if anybody's been to this like gas station, pit stop, diner, whatever the heck it is, it was a mishmash of things, but they have the best freaking bread in the world. So if anybody's ever been there and they see this, they know, right? If you're a local or you're somebody from Newfoundland, you've done that drive and you stopped at this place, you know where the moose is, and you get a little warm, fuzzy feeling because you're like, oh yeah, the bread, I know that place. So that makes sense to you, it makes a connection with you. It does exactly what social media wants it to do. But if that Facebook page caters more toward people who are from away, who've never been here, and they're aspirational guests, you can't have your caption say "Stop for bread." That abbreviation IYKYK stands for if you know, you know. So like, stop for bread, if you know, you know. Someone from Ontario who's never been here, they won't get it. They won't get that joke. And so that caption, you can still post the photo, but that caption can't be "Stop for bread." It has to explain. Even if you say "Stop for bread," it has to say, at this place, they do blah, 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 blah. You have to explain it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense to them and the whole thing falls flat. And ultimately, you're not going to make a connection with them. And ultimately, you're probably going to lose them as a follower. So that's why understanding whether you are talking to people who are familiar with you or people who are strangers really matters. It changes the way you might approach things. So another thing to consider when choosing is, what do you want to share? Because it's obviously, we want to talk about things that those people want to hear in order to keep them interested. But if you're doing all this social media marketing, you obviously have the purpose of why you're doing it. So, are you selling experiences or products on an ongoing basis? Are you selling experiences or products and you want to do pops of different sales or discounts or specials? Are you wanting to share travel inspiration so they come and stay with you? Maybe news and updates about you or about your area. And a big goal should be to lure people into your website, especially if you're someone who's selling something and you have booking capabilities on your website. You're going to want to have these people go into your website. So those are the kinds of things that you might want to share, and you'll share them differently depending on which social media channel you're on. And when I do the 3 examples later, you'll see how those choices differ depending on the type of information that you want to share. You also have to consider what tools you're going to need to do justice to that channel. You're definitely going to need a content plan. Plan is number 1 in my book, as you all know now. Great photos, great video, caption writing. Do you need a link sharing site? I mentioned link sharing sites before. In one of the examples later, I show why a link sharing site makes sense for a certain type of situation. So you may need that. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, you will need hashtag research. On any of the social channels, you're going to need partner and tagging research. Again, I'll share a little bit more about that in the example so you understand. But you, depending on which channel you're using, like hashtag research can take a lot of time. If you don't have time to do hashtag research, you probably shouldn't be on Instagram. There's no point in doing it without doing it justice, right? So that's just something to consider. But to be crystal clear, okay, so everybody again doesn't feel overwhelmed. There are no absolutes in social media. You can't do video? Fine, so don't, right? You only have time to take pictures once a month. Plan around that you only have time to take pictures once a month. If you're not a great caption writer, you need to get better at tagging partners so that more people will be able to share your posts and your information, because you can't rely on the caption to do a lot of the selling for you. So there really aren't any absolutes, and this is why planning is so important, because you need to work around your situation, what you can do, what you can't do, what you have time for, what you don't have time for. And if you do that and you create that plan around reality, not around like what some marketing consultant says you should be doing, like you should be doing X amount of posts and they should be this and they should be that. They really shouldn't be anything. They should be doing something that works for you in a way that uses the social media channel to the best of its possible maximum ability, and also doesn't make you a basket case because you don't have time or money to keep up with doing what you would consider to be doing it justice. Just because you can't do it all doesn't mean you can't do something. So I would recommend that everybody start in a small and manageable way, grow the effort if possible as you get more comfortable. Now, I think this is almost the last thing, how to cultivate success on your channels. These are 7 tips to make your social media channel more effective. Number 1 is posting consistency. Sporadic posting is not ideal. The algorithm does not like when you post, 4 times in one day and then you don't post for 2 weeks and then you post a little bit more. They like regularity. It does not like when you post at the same exact time on the same exact day every week. That sort of regularity doesn't like. It gets desensitized. But posting on a regular basis, it really does like. Also, people are busy and they miss stuff, right? So you got to make sure that you're posting consistently so you always have an opportunity to be in their face. And this is especially true for Facebook, where you should always want to keep the conversation going. Number 2 is what I call texture in posts. You want to vary your post types. In general, this holds true with just a very few strategic exceptions. Sometimes post videos, sometimes post photos, sometimes links, sometimes text only. Sometimes you're sharing other posts, like other people's posts, other businesses' posts from your local area or whatever. Sometimes you're retweeting things. Sometimes your caption is really long. Sometimes it's just a word or two. You want to be varying your post types. This keeps the algorithm fresh, and it also keeps your audience more engaged and less desensitized. You definitely do not want to skimp on visuals. And when I say skimp on visuals, I don't mean that you need to go spend a fortune on visuals. For the most part, iPhone stuff, any kind of mobile phone camera is going to be fine. You need to be aware of the photo and video orientation. For those of you who are not aware, Facebook likes videos done landscape this way, and Instagram likes videos done portrait style this way. So, and they post better, and the algorithm responds better, and it's also a better user experience if you use those kinds of orientation. If you have to, take an online class, especially now with the pandemic. There's like a billion photography and videography for iPhone classes online, and it's really, really worth it, because the photos and videos are really what makes social media tick, and you need to know what makes a good shot. Spend time on your captions. This is where you tell your story. As I said before, the visual stops their thumbs, but the caption is what inspires them to care, and maybe some sort of call to action that you're asking them to do. You should be as brief as possible on your captions, unless the whole purpose of the post is to tell a long story. Just to give you an idea, so that you don't so you have an idea of like how much time you should be spending on captions. I've spent up to 15 minutes writing a 10-word caption for a really important post. I don't spend 15 minutes writing every caption, but there are times where it really needs to be done right, the right amount of sharing, just the right tone, the right amount of tagging, like that kind of stuff. So don't skimp on the captions, because they're really what's going to sell that story. Researching your hashtags and your tags. Okay, this is a simple way, but not an easy way, a simple way to extend your audience reach. Hashtags are essential for luring in new people on Instagram, and it's also good for Twitter. You need to gather a list of all of your partner social handles in advance. So like, for example, if you're an attraction, you want to make sure, or a hotel, you want to make sure you know what your regional DMO, like what their Instagram handle is, and the handle for Newfoundland and Labrador tourism. You want to know what those are because you want to be tagging those so that those accounts are seeing what you're posting as well. So gathering a list of all of those different handles in advance is really wise. And except for a core list, your hashtags are going to change frequently depending on your post content, right? Partner social handles are going to be pretty consistent because it's like, the DMO is not going to change their handle. But if you're doing a post about a sunset, then your hashtag needs to be about sunsets. If you're doing a post about wildlife, then your post needs to be about wildlife. So every time you do a post, some of your hashtags are going to change in order to reflect that. If hashtags are a mystery to you, then please relax, because a couple of in the 2019 H&L conference, I did a whole session on hashtags. And Juanita, the lovely Juanita, has agreed to send out that hashtag PowerPoint to you when she sends out the deck for this presentation as well after this. So that'll give you lots of information about how to use and choose different hashtags. Number 6 is audience building. Do not let your audience get stale. You need to use discovery tools like hashtags and tags on Instagram and Twitter. Whatever channel you're focusing on, you should be promoting it through all of your other channels, including your website, your email, your brochures, on site in the rooms, at the front desk, wherever that kind of stuff is, on any of your merchandise. You really need to keep new blood coming in to stop your audience from getting stale. And remember who you're targeting. So if I'm, Adventure Central Newfoundland, I'm going to be targeting a whole different group of people than probably Rocket Bakery will. Central Newfoundland, like even from away, like even Central Newfoundland versus Legendary Coast, for example. Legendary Coast may or may not target New York City in some of their posts, but Central Newfoundland with that come from away connection is probably likely to be wanting to share stuff in New York City or anywhere that the show Come From Away is running. Rocket Bakery is going to want to reach a local market. Brenda Rowe Artworks, another participant that's here, could reach local or could reach them. Think of the amount of people who used to live in Newfoundland and now live somewhere else, and you might want to be targeting them because they might want to buy paintings or artwork that remind them of their home, right? Their home province. So keeping that in mind when I say don't let your audience get stale, I definitely mean thinking of not just anyone, but the types of audiences that you need to be targeting for your business. And I also think spending a bit of money on social media is always a good idea. Not a lot, doesn't have to be a lot, but some sort of regular paid, what I call like a shot in the arm, really helps. Even just boosting an occasional important post will reach new audiences, and it also reignites the algorithm, which is always good. You can spend less than $50 a month on this. I don't care if you spend $10 a month on this. Just do something to periodically keep the audience fresh and the algorithm fresh. And targeting options on socials are really excellent. 2 small examples based on what I just mentioned a moment ago. Here's a great post by Brenda Rowe Artwork, and just this new sort of launch of the jelly bean houses with the newest artwork. So again, if there's being able to target people who live in BC who are in some way connected to Newfoundland, they went to school there, or they're involved in like Newfoundland Facebook groups or anything like that, you can target those people specifically, in some of your advertising. Rocket Bakery wouldn't waste their time. There might be plenty of people who live in BC who would feel nostalgia over seeing, Rocket Bakery posts. But do you really want to spend your money trying to reach those people? They live in BC. They can't buy anything from you. And so then your big thing, Rocket Bakery, would be who's local? Like we just launched a new menu item. We just launched a whole new menu. We should be promoting that locally so that all the people around Mount Pearl or wherever else we have a location, they should know what our new menu is. And so we would spend a bit of money promoting that, because those are people that you can actually, again, remembering your goal is to try to make sales, right? So that's how you would look at it. Oops. Okay, so final thing in part 1 is how do we make time for all this? This is what I call the secret sauce, guys. I feel like I should lean in. This is what I call the secret sauce. Okay, secret sauce. This is it. This is the secret sauce. You need to freaking make time to sit and think and plan your upcoming content. A lot of people do not do this. And sitting down and devoting time, turning off your email, putting your phone on silent for a little bit, and without any distractions, just sitting down and thinking and planning your upcoming content. What does that look like? Oh, and by the way, don't tell me you don't have time to do this, because the simple fact is that we can all make time for the things we want or need to do. It's just a matter of revamping our priorities. And for some reason, in the world of tourism, really any business, social media often falls by the wayside as like the thing that we don't have to do. If it's like not urgent and it's not a customer screaming at me and it's not a vendor or a delivery or a supplier trying to get something from me, if it's not the toilets haven't broken, it's not like something I need to repair, that always, social media always falls by the wayside. But if we make time for it, then we're going to get more out of it. So how often should you plan? There are dozens of ways that you could do this, okay? You could say once a week, I'm gonna take an hour and I'm gonna just sit down and think about what social media stuff I'm gonna do for this week. Or every other week, you could say, I'm gonna do that for an hour or two. Again, it depends on how many channels you're managing, how much content you need to be sharing, and all of that. Another thing that a lot of people find really helpful is to take one day a month. Like, it's hard for them to carve out an hour or 2 hours. It's too many things. It's much easier for them to say, I'm blocking a whole day, or I'm blocking a half a day. I'm going to not come in until 1 o'clock. I'm going to do this from my home, or I'm going to shut my office door and I'm not going to let anybody in, or whatever it is. That sometimes the longer block of time is easier for people, or doing it hybrid, like an hour here and there, but then a full day once a quarter. But like, the options go on, but like, figuring out how you can set aside time to do this planning, I guarantee you it's going to make your social media efforts so much easier and so much more seamless and much less painful, because I do know that doing that can be painful for a lot of people. What are you doing when you're taking all this time? You're planning what you're going to post. Like, what are the upcoming holidays for the next month? What are the milestones of our business? What announcements do we have to make? Like, what content am I going to share? What photos do I need? What videos do I need? Do I have them, or do I need to like get them? And if I need to get them, how do I plan what I'm going to get and when I'm going to get it? Do you need to do any research for the captions? Making sure that there's texture, some of it's videos, some of it's photos, some of it's text, and like, also from a time standpoint, making sure there's a balanced blend of posts that you can do quickly when you don't have a lot of time, and posts that are going to take a little bit more time for you to set up. If you do only posts that are quick and easy, your social media feed is not going to be that interesting to people. But if you do posts that are exclusively complex and really difficult, your social media feed might be interesting, but you're going to want to strangle yourself for giving yourself that burden of having to make every single post be really complicated. So you want to have that blend. You also, during this time, want to be surfing other socials for inspiration. It's not only looking at what your competitors are doing in the province, but like, follow if you're a hotel or a small inn in Newfoundland, follow a small inn that does really good socials in Scotland or in Tasmania. You're not competing with them. You can follow the same thing they do. Like, it'll just give you more ideas. And then it's different if you did the same thing the guy down the street was doing. It's totally, you probably don't share audiences with those people. So you can get lots of inspirational ideas from looking at similar types of businesses to yourself in other destinations. And then just like preparing all of the things that you're going to post, like taking the visuals, gathering the visuals if they're somewhere, doing all your research for hashtags and tags and captions, and really spending a little time drafting what the certain amounts of copy that are going to require some advanced thought. So I repeat, don't just say, I don't have time for this. That is literally like getting a dog or a plant or a car or anything else that requires maintenance and saying, well, I don't have the time to take care of it. Look, you bought it, and so now you have to take care of it. You can't just say, like, I don't want to do it. So if you make a commitment to do it, it's your responsibility to maintain it. And you just have to remember that social media does take some care and maintenance. Why should you structure your time in this way? Well, it focuses your concentration, and it's way more efficient than doing things strictly on the fly. Stopping what you're doing to search for one perfect photo that you want to post, as opposed to devoting an hour occasionally to finding and taking a bunch of photos you need and then having them in your phone or wherever ready to go. That's a much more efficient way to structure your time. And doing the research to find the right hashtags can be really time consuming when you do it on a one-off basis. It's much more effective if you take a bunch of time and do all that research together. And I'll say, if you do it this way and you make it a habit, you're going to have a continually growing library of ideas and tools that you can use on a regular basis. So I'm going to end this section with a little bit of personal advice from me, because obviously we not only do social media for and with lots of other businesses, but we also, Redpoint does our own social media as well. So I know the struggle, I know the pain of trying to do it and keep it interesting, but not have it take too much time. And, what resources do I have available? So I'm going to give you a little personal advice. put your phone on silent, like pick a time. So if you're going to do this, I do this once a month. For me, I do this once a month. I can't speak for all of you. It's easier for me if I do it once a month. So I block a day, I do this once a month. I put my phone on silent, I shut off email notifications. And then I like to, because I don't know, maybe I'm a princess. I don't know, but like I like to treat myself because that's not my favorite thing to do. And I have to like almost bribe myself to do it. So on those days, I'm wearing my comfiest clothes, I'm wearing my fuzziest slippers, maybe I'm drinking wine, maybe I'm eating cake, maybe I'm having like the coffee that I don't normally have. If you normally try to give these things up and you can indulge in these kinds of things, but like make that time, whether it's an hour or 2 hours, like make that time, inject some positivity into it and make that time kind of like you time. They say me time, like make that a little me time for yourself where you are indulging as well and you're adding some fun and some positivity and some joy back into it. And you'll find that that definitely works. I mean, at the very least, it feels good, right? So how bad could it be? Okay, before we break and then review some examples, I'm just going to ask who has some questions. I see one thing in the chat. Juanita, is that a question or is that just somebody saying hi? I see two things in the chat. What do we got, Juan?
Oh, there was a question from Roseanne, and it says, you probably will get this later, but as a business, do you suggest daily post or what is the ideal?
Yeah, so there isn't an ideal. I wish I had a better answer for you on that, Roseanne. But choosing the frequency that you need to post is going to depend on the type of business you are and how much news you have to share. If you have to be cobbling together stuff in order to make, 5 days a week or daily, then it's probably not going to be that interesting to the people who are on your feed who follow you. So you want to balance it based on the amount of content and the type of content you have to share with also the amount of time you have available. And you're correct. When we do the 3 examples later, I'm going to share how, in a way, like how you evaluate that and how you're able to break it down. So you'll see a little bit more of that.
Okay, the next question. I'm wondering, how important do you think it is to spend time engaging with, liking, commenting on posts, other relevant accounts from your business channels? How much time would you recommend spending on that?
Quite a bit. Well, it depends. So on Instagram, not as much. I mean, certainly with the people who are saying things on your post, that's really important. But in terms of like Facebook, for example, since that was one of the ones we were covering, getting involved and answering comments and liking things, and either the people who've commented or shared on your post, and also other partners, other businesses, like commenting on their posts and sharing their posts. All of that is really good because Facebook is designed for exponential sharing. So every time you do that, it like puts you in front of people again. It like takes your thing and puts it back up to the top of the feed. And also, if you're sharing other people's stuff, you're commenting on their stuff, like your business partners, other businesses in the area, Newfoundland tourism, your DMO, whatever, the more, I guess this is just human nature, the more you comment and share their stuff, the more likely they are to comment and share on your stuff, which can only be good for you. So there is a little quid pro quo going on with social media. The reason I said not as much on Instagram is just because it doesn't have that exponential sharing. But when people comment on Instagram, it's always a good idea to comment back, because that too says to the Instagram algorithm, this is a popular post. Or it doesn't matter with you commenting. If you're answering people, there are 4 comments and you answer all 4 of those, even just to say thanks, like that's now 8 comments. And 8 comments to Instagram's algorithm is better than 4 comments, even though 4 of them are you. So that's why the commenting and the sharing and stuff is really important. What else, Juanita? Do we have more?
No, that's it for now.
Great. Okay. So I hope that wasn't too fast for everybody. I also know that everybody will get a lot out of the examples, and we're going to get to that next. But before we do that, I don't know about you guys. I just feel like sitting in one spot for 2 hours looking at a screen can be a little challenging. I think we're really only going to do 3 minutes or so, but just get, refresh your drink, run to the washroom. We'll come back and get started again in like 3 or 4 minutes. So let's just take a few minutes and do that. Okay, guys, I think we're back. I hope you enjoyed that lovely music. while we were having our little break. We're going to get rid of our dog now. I hope everyone's still here because we're going into the real meat of the session. And let me get my little clicker going again. All right. So let's look at some examples and see how all of the things that I just said applies in real life. Because what happens is we go to these sessions, you look at all that stuff, it looks good on paper, then you go back and you're like, what do I do? Like, how do I apply those choices to my own business? So we're going to look at 3 different entities. Today we're going to look at the Happy Adventure Inn, the Rising Tide Theater, and Nunatsiavut Tourism. And they're 3 obviously very different, and they're also in very different locations. And so this is going to give us an opportunity to look at, really different types of social media and the different ways that social media can work for all of these different categories. So before I do the examples, let me just let everybody know how this exercise was done. Okay, so I definitely chose 3 different business categories and I used my own knowledge and online research in order to do this assessment. I did not look at their social channels to see what they're already doing now. That was not the purpose of this exercise, wasn't to evaluate what they're doing. It was like, if this business in this location that offers these types of things, here is what I think they should be doing on social media. I made lots of assumptions without fact checking. I didn't speak with any of these folks about their socials other than just to get their permission to use them as examples. These were some of the people who signed up first for this thing. So when Juanita sent me the very first registration list a while back, I just picked right from there. And so they've given me the permission. I'm not using them as guinea pigs and examples without their permission. And I tried to craft some ideas that I think would work well on social media channels. To be clear, so everybody remembers, okay, my ideas are not the right ideas. It's not like, oh, the marketing girl from New York said we should do this, and so that's the right idea. They're just ideas, guys. All different types of ideas could work on social. Some of my assumptions may be completely wrong about what they're trying to achieve or what they should be doing, but the exercise is to really show how the choices get made. So the lesson I'm trying to share with everyone today still works. And also, this wasn't a deep dive assessment, and it's not a detailed strategy. I did not do like a strategic audit on everybody's situation. These are really just my first flush thoughts as a marketer and as an outsider to show how choices are different depending on the circumstances. And for you 3 organizations that are the examples here, you can feel free to use any of this if you want. Everybody knows I'm all for one and all one for all. So go ahead and use it and have at it. So the first one we'll cover is the Happy Adventure Inn, which is in Happy Adventure Land, which just like warms my heart. I want to hug every person who lives there. And here, this is a complex business. They've got the inn, they've got tours, they have a restaurant, they sell art, they have an event venue, and they also do painting parties. One of the owners is an artist, and so in addition to the art that they sell in the inn, the artist does these various painting parties, both at the inn and also in, I think, Terra Nova National Park, if you're still doing that. Okay, the assumptions that I made in order to do this sort of exercise. Okay, that I'm assuming that they're what they want to promote. The inn, they want to promote the tours, they want to promote the restaurant, the event space, and in some way the art offerings. Like selling art may not be their primary thing, but I mean, they sell art, so they might as well in some way try to sell those things. They probably want to promote to locals for the restaurant, the artwork, painting parties, the tours, and the event space. Locals meaning not just the folks in the Happy Adventure area, but like generally locally, within an easy drive of their destination. And then probably Newfoundland and Labrador, the Maritimes, and away, like anybody outside of that, for the inn, the tours, and the event space. How far away do they want to promote, or could they promote? I mean, really anywhere. With the inn being an anchor for the destination, there's enough richness in what they have to offer that they could potentially promote to, as I would call them, strangers from away. Should they? I don't know. Let's go through this and see what they should be doing. Okay, so my preliminary thoughts, there is a lot to promote here. There's so much texture to make a really good, worthy newsfeed with all of those different things. But they have the local versus away issue to deal with on content choices. There are going to be a lot of local people who are interested in the types of things that matter to the people who live there. If they're promoting to people from away to attract potential guests, those things aren't going to resonate as much with them. So there's going to be a little bit of inconsistency there that we have to deal with. And honestly, like to me, is there a better spot to hold a wedding than a place called Happy Adventure? That's a great hook, to be used in wedding promotions and things like that. I don't know if they're doing that now. Again, like I said, I didn't go really look, But that's a great hook for having people want to come there, start their lives together as part of some sort of a destination wedding or an elopement. The business has really great customer reviews, so they're definitely going to want to make these folks some social ambassadors. And the inn or the tours, like the business may have a specific demographic in mind of who they think their target customer is, but really the content that they share could appeal to anyone. It's versatile enough and diverse enough that it could appeal to anyone. So the ever important question, I told you guys you need to ask this of yourselves: why would somebody follow this business on social media? The locals for any restaurant news and specials, for information about painting parties, for any events, like any amazing photos from their tours, like wildlife and icebergs and the different types of tours that they do, any of those amazing photos, and just to be neighborly, they might just follow them because it's a thing in our area and we should follow these people. Why would someone who lives away but is familiar with the business want to be a part of them on social media? These are past guests who want to cherish their vacation memories and stay connected. And maybe folks who used to live in that area and are away. You may remember before I mentioned, like, maybe it doesn't make sense for Rocket Bakery to care about what people in BC are doing, but like for someone here who used to live in their area, who's moved to BC, it can be really cool for them to follow them on social media and just kind of keep up with what's going on in the neighborhood and like see photos of things that remind them of home and all that stuff. Strangers is a whole different scenario in terms of like people who live away who would be potential customers for this property. No connection to the area, have never been before. You know, why would somebody like that want to follow them on social media? It totally depends on the vibe and the content of the channel. Like this particular business has a great edge with a name like Happy Adventure. Folks could potentially find that quirky and fun. So if the channel, whatever channel it is, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, if that's delivering consistent travel inspiration without a lot of clutter, it's possible strangers would love it. What do I mean by without a lot of clutter? Travel inspiration is like photos of icebergs and wildlife and the beautiful area and how the gorgeous rooms and your friendly tour guide and all the things that you would want to do when you're there that like would lure you to be there. Clutter to those people is like the daily special at the restaurant, you know, a behind the scenes that has nothing to do with them. It's not sort of inspirational. It's not getting them to think about what they can do when they're there. It's like the kind of stuff that clutters their feed. And if there's too much of that, then they're ultimately going to want to unfollow because that stuff really isn't as interesting to them. And those of you who are on social media as people, not as brands, you know, sometimes it's like your feed gets annoying. There's just too many things in it. So the minute there's something in there regularly that is annoying to you, or it's something that's not really of interest to you, you're likely to hit unfollow. My gut instinct for this particular business is to make Facebook your main channel and to use this to post any and all topics from all of your business units, the restaurant, the inn, the tours, the painting, the event space, like this is your big hub that everything that you do should be on Facebook. And this is the channel that you pay the most attention to and you sort of like, I say, like give it the most love. You want to place emphasis on promoting this channel to guests of all of your business units because you want to make sure that like they're getting engaged. Those are the people who are most likely to share your stuff and most likely to like your stuff and comment on your stuff. And so offering to let people know that if they tag you, you might potentially share their photos on your Facebook is another way you're going to get people to engage with you. And if you share their stuff, they're going to want to share the fact that you shared their stuff. That's like cool to them. And remember what I said before about the algorithm, every time you can get someone interested in sharing your stuff or commenting your stuff, it's going to send positive signals to that algorithm and it's going to make it stronger. So you guys have a big opportunity to get more people to share because you have all these different business units. You can get people at the restaurant, the people who take pictures on the tours, the people who are taking pictures at the inn, maybe they're doing the painting thing with you in Terra Nova Park. Like all of those things are opportunities for other people to post about you and tag you so that you can share their stuff and get all of that algorithm goodness going. I would recommend here that this business should post daily if time allows, just so there is so much there. There's like so many different things that you could post, but a minimum of 4 times a week at the least that you do. And I would not, many of you know that you can share, you can auto share, you can post on Instagram and automatically have it share to Facebook, or you can post on Facebook and have it automatically share to Instagram or add the other channels as well. I would not recommend auto sharing to Instagram or any other channels with Facebook. And in a minute, you're going to see why. I would suggest that this business makes Instagram their specialty channel specifically designed for the away market. Now, this does not prohibit a past guest from enjoying the content or being a part of that or following you or liking you on Instagram. It doesn't prohibit that, but it also doesn't clutter up the feed with content that's irrelevant to someone just looking for inspiration. You know, any restaurant specials, any news about what's going on in the town, any minutia or like little tiny things that maybe wouldn't make sense to someone who's from away. The focus goal here on Instagram is going to be inspiration, right? It's like thinking again about like you having your own little magazine that you're doing. You can share your Instagram post. Remember, I was saying don't auto share from Facebook to Instagram, but you can auto share from Instagram to Facebook. That'll just give you another shot of content going over to Facebook, because remember what we're doing with Facebook, that's going to be your main hub where you have everything and you're posting a lot of different things. And so sharing something from Instagram on there is only going to make that feed stronger. And all of the people who are in your Facebook community, they're going to respond to that just as well. So sharing from Instagram to Facebook is okay and actually a really good idea. I would periodically also recommend talking about your Instagram channel on Facebook, like, hey, did you know we're on Instagram? Or sharing one of the posts and saying, you know, this whatever, you know, on Instagram, check us out, and putting the link to your Instagram channel so that people who are on Facebook, if they're interested in inspiration, it's only going to help you to grow your Instagram audience. So you're kind of like using Facebook to promote Instagram, but that's going to be a good way to start really increasing that audience on Instagram. Twitter, you know, if you're going to use Twitter for anything, I would make it just about the restaurant, you know, but really only if there's a segment of people in your area who care about, like, I don't know if there are daily specials. I don't know if there is enough news that you can announce on a regular basis and that people use Twitter. If like people in your area use Twitter, that's a question for you that I couldn't solve. And they need to know this information, like hours, if there's any events, if you have any live music or you're doing anything special or you have certain specials or you're at a lobster and you want to let people know or whatever the case may be. This is really about news and not inspiration. So you would do this, you would use Twitter the same way you would use a specials or a menu board. This is just another way to communicate. But like if there isn't anybody in your area who's using Twitter and it isn't going to be useful, then I would think don't waste your time. You can put the same information on Facebook and it would accomplish the same mission, which is again why we're separating Facebook from Instagram here, so that we can talk to those two different groups of people with content that matters most to them. Okay, and then for Facebook, here are some of the content ideas I would suggest. If this is what we would consider your main newspaper, you have to think of the content like columns or departments. You don't call them that. You don't say like, here's my XYZ, here's my restaurant column, or here's my in column. You just use them as your guide for content inspiration and development. You also don't have to have a set day for each department. A lot of people try to do this, like Foodie Fridays or, you know, Travel Tuesday, or, you know, you make up in your mind, like every Monday you're going to post a picture of a whatever. And like in your mind, like you say that and you then eventually commit to people. I wouldn't do that, honestly, because it's just a lot of pressure. Things happen so fast and you don't always get an opportunity to post the way you want or at the times that you want. And then you sort of committed to something and your audience, you know, they're probably not looking at their watch waiting for the post, but you sort of told them you're going to do this. And if you don't do it, it just looks kind of lame. So my experience is that most people don't think about you nearly as much as you think about yourself. So it's better to just leave it, post when you want, post a Foodie Friday anytime you want, and then don't post on the next week. It doesn't matter. But if you make it a point to say you're going to always post Foodie Friday, you're going to have to, it's just pressure you don't need. Just make sure that you're always sharing a variety of content, like spread out the topics. Don't post about the restaurant 4 days in a row. Don't post about the inn 4 days in a row. Like do the inn, do the restaurant, do a tour, do a picture of wildlife, and do an iceberg, and maybe like a behind the scenes of something. And you post about one of your suppliers that, you know, one of the fishermen that's at the restaurant, you know, anything like that, but like keep it kind of going so that you're not posting the same type of content. Remembering again that Facebook is like an ongoing conversation. And you should post photos and videos. I think both of them are going to be applicable to you. So posting daily here, as I mentioned, would be awesome. And one way to achieve that is to remember that not all posts have to be amazing and require a lot of thought and planning. You could have like 2 or 3 posts a week that require you to do a little bit of work, but then the other one could just be a post about a daily special at the restaurant, or maybe you take a picture of like the morning view in that harbor there and just post it saying like, good morning. Like you really don't even have to make a good caption for that because the photo will do all the work for you. So it's like making sure in terms of managing your own time that you're posting things that sometimes take a lot of work and sometimes take no work at all. you even have all of those paintings in the inn, you know, that are done by the owner. You could just take a picture of one of those and just have an interesting or fun sort of caption or comment about that. And then again, like, it doesn't have to be super involved. It could just be something that you do on the fly. I mean, what could you post about? Okay, so here's just some examples. The interiors of the inn, the exteriors of the inn, the tours, like wildlife, ocean, coastal views, the experiences, all the people that are involved in the tours, you know, that put those tours together. The restaurant, foods, drinks, recipes are always good. Any behind the scenes stuff is always good, like what's going on in the kitchen or what's going on with the servers or things like that, where you can do that. Anything about the suppliers, any specials you're having, what there is to do in the area, like go take pictures and photos and videos and stuff in the local shops and the restaurants, visit some of the attractions, the landscapes, the nature, all of that stuff. You could also share these posts from shops and restaurants. That's another great way to kind of keep your feed interesting. So maybe like if you're doing 5 posts a week, for example, 3 of them are yours and 2 of them are you sharing, you know, the local restaurant or a local shop in town, or, you know, the DMO's, you know, photo of something that was in the area, like anything like that. That's posts, but they're not all yours. You don't have to go to work. So, you know, somebody else can do a little of the lifting. You can also do nearby drives, because again, if you're thinking about people who are coming from somewhere else, like showcasing what people can drive to during their stay at the inn. I love the idea of the happiest adventure being like your theme for focusing on weddings or vow renewals, anniversaries, romance, anything like that. These days, you probably would have somebody want to come there for their divorce celebration as a happiest adventure. So maybe romance is not always everybody's thing, but you know, it's a great hook, and I definitely think you guys should use that. I think the art spotlight would be another good one. The event space is great, showcasing the parties and meetings that have happened, giving a shout out to the hosts that have been there, that have booked parties with you, tagging them if they let you, because you want them to share it, and that might plant seeds with other people to host their events with you. Like, hey, we just had our birthday party here, or we just had our local meeting here, or, you know, whatever the case may be. And then kind of like what's happening, like any in the moment news or thoughts, you know, that are going on. Packages and specials are really important. Remember, the very first thing I had on my assumptions is that you guys probably want to sell stuff. You probably want to sell room nights. You probably want to sell tours. You probably want to sell restaurant stuff. You probably want to sell paintings. Like any packages and specials, I would suggest making sure that at least once a week, if it's about different business units, like maybe you post an in package or an in special, or book, you know, book now, some kind of like room thing once a week. If it's like you do that once a week, if you want to do it a couple of times, maybe then one thing is about booking a tour, one thing is about buying a painting, one thing is about booking the meeting room. Like, it shouldn't be promoting the same thing all the time. That gets like draining for people. But you definitely want to remember that this is a promotional tool. So, you know, so you should be using it. So they don't have to be discounts, but, you know, it's fine if they are discounts, just like the whole idea is use this for selling. On Instagram, which is now, as we've determined, different strategy here, you want gorgeous photos or video that could be of interest to people who don't know you, but they love travel and the outdoors, and they want inspiration in their feed. Nature, wildlife, scenic views, icebergs, things during the day, things at night, the inn in the surrounding area. Heck, go on the road. If you're like traveling to Gander, you're traveling to Corner Brook, like take other pictures and other destinations and share those on yours as well. Remember, this is your magazine. This is your online magazine, and you are curating content for other people. So if someone is going to be coming from Quebec or British Columbia or the United States and they follow you, well, they might not just come to you, they might come to you and they might go to 3 other places in Newfoundland. So essentially you're helping them, you know, curate potential ideas and inspiring them for other places to go during their stay. I would definitely include gorgeous wedding shots here if possible on Instagram, because I do think, again, that's a market that's good for you, and that's really good for Instagram as well. On Instagram, I would recommend posting a minimum of 2 times a week, more if you can, but really, like, just making sure that this is always, no matter when somebody drops into it, it's pretty current, right? And they can take a look at it. This is the account, this is the channel I'd suggest spending a little bit of money on to steadily increase your follower account. You may recall that the sharing thing is not a feature of Instagram the way it is on Facebook. So you're gonna have to work a little bit harder in order to increase your follower account. You can advertise just on Instagram or Facebook, like for Instagram. I would suggest, again, I'm just throwing out numbers, I would suggest starting at a minimum of $25 a month. That's not a lot, it's pretty reasonable. You're not trying to rule the world here. You're just trying to steadily add fresh followers over time. Who are you targeting? Nature, adventure, outdoor lovers, wildlife lovers, people who are newly engaged, people who are from Newfoundland and now live elsewhere. Like those are the types of people that you're targeting on Instagram. The hashtags that describe each post content is going to be essential to luring in relevant targets. So you should especially be using key province and country hashtags like Explore NL, Icebergs NL, Explore Canada, Adventure Central on every post. And you should be tagging their accounts as well so that they know that you're posting and they may want to share your posts with other, with their newsfeed, their followers as well. So how could you manage this? Because it always comes back to like, how do we have time to manage this? Basically what you're doing, for my recommendations, basically if you take those recommendations, you're planning a minimum of 16 Facebook posts and 8 Instagram posts per month, that should say month. That's your planning goal. So that's what you need to do. If we say on Facebook, okay, so you use the suggested categories that I gave you, the in interiors, the in exteriors, whatever. If you set aside time each month to plan the next month's content, there were 10 Facebook categories I gave you already. If you just plan one for each, you're more than halfway to your goal, and you can make the other 6 things that you share from other accounts of people in your region, and like there's your 16 and you're done. If you could do more than that, great. But if you can do that and you can do it consistently, then you're going to see a strong ROI from an organic perspective on what you're doing for social media. So another thing you can do as you're kind of looking at all of that is looking at upcoming holidays and announcements so that you can align the content that you're planning with any kind of news anchors, if it's Canada Day or if it's, like a holiday or if it's like an anniversary for the inn or something like that. Okay, so that's how I would suggest you could manage this. Okay, so that was then. Let's put the inn and the tours and that complex business aside. And now we're going to go to the Rising Tide Theater, which is a cultural attraction. It's very different than what we just experienced. This is a theater that does a festival. You probably all know the Newfoundland Trinity pageant. And then there's like shows, they do concerts, they do dinner theater, they have lots of experiences. And it's in a really great destination. So let's take a look at what we have for them. My assumptions here, again, I could be way off base. The consumer business goal is probably to sell tickets. Other goals would include securing donations and securing sponsors. But generally speaking, the whole point here is to get people to want to come to these shows. My assumption from working with lots of other cultural attractions around the world is that you're not likely to have a dedicated, stable staffing situation for socials. You probably don't have a person who's like only doing this. And if you're doing it yourself, whoever you are, who's managing the situation, you probably have 1,000 other things to do as part of your job description, and socials typically becomes an afterthought. I think you probably are promoting to locals and regional area folks for the shows and the festival pageant, like some people who are drive to, and then some people who might come for an overnight. And St. John's is a little bit far for like a drive to, so that they might be coming and doing some sort of an overnight with you in the area. For away people, I would say, probably expats, people who are from Newfoundland who are living somewhere else, and maybe past attendees. They've been visitors to the area who have attended your shows, and then they like you on Facebook or whatever, and then they kind of keep in contact with you that way. But as far as strangers go, like trying to lure new people in, I wouldn't count on social media as your primary channel for that, unless the content you're producing is wildly hilarious and entertaining. And it doesn't really promote the theater. It's just the content itself is entertaining and someone might want to follow you just for that. But other than that, like if you think about it, it's not really Rising Tide's job to bring in tourists from elsewhere. They're coming because of the destination. They're coming because of the accommodations. Like other people are responsible for bringing them to the area. And your job is to entertain them when they get there. That's not to say you couldn't, but just in terms of where you spend your resources, I wouldn't look to social media to be a channel or a category or marketing medium that you should be using to try to get to strangers. My preliminary thoughts here, this is a seasonal operation, so the question is always what happens on socials in the off season, and lots of you are seasonal, and the question is always, well, do we just go dark? And then we're not open, so what do we talk about, right? So that's definitely one thing we need to take in mind. The pageant concept gives, to my mind, incredible ideas for socials, and I'm definitely going to give you one. And unless you're prepared for heavy lift, I would stick with the local and regional audiences for socials, and also put a strong emphasis on partnering with other local and regional social channels to promote and share your content. Hotels in the area, your DMO, all of those people whose primary job it is to bring visitors to the region, those people are likely to be following those social media channels. So if you can get those channels to share information about the shows that you're offering, then that's going to help them build their itinerary of things to do when they can get there. So a big part of your social media job is to kind of be promoting your stuff to the other people who could then be promoting you on their social channels. But I have to say this, okay? You guys are actors. So maybe a heavy lift of fun, hilarious content is right up your alley, especially in the off season. And maybe you can get a sponsor to fund some production of that. And I have an idea, so don't go away. So why would somebody follow Rising Tide Theater? Locals for entertainment, or pride, like if they take pride in the fact that this is Newfoundlander. Again, I haven't met as many Labradorians as I have Newfoundlanders, but you guys are hilarious. You are the first people to like take your other Newfoundlanders down a peg, and you like to kind of bash them in sometimes an affectionate way and sometimes not an affectionate way. But man, the pride in Newfoundland, like don't let an outsider bash a Newfoundlander. You guys take great pride in your heritage and your history and your culture, which is amazing. And some place like Rising Tide could really tap into that, because you're basically in so many ways showcasing the history and the heritage of Newfoundland. And locals would want it for news and updates. What are the new shows? When are they coming on? Who's in them? Like those are the types of things that people in the area want to know. Regional, I think same kind of thing. Entertainment, pride, ideas for a weekend trip is really good for that. The expats, people who are from Newfoundland who now live away, again, pride, entertainment, staying connected to Newfoundland and nostalgia, like seeing some of the shows, and especially seeing some of the shows that are about Newfoundland is really great for them, right? So something like that is good. I think why would someone who's away, lives away and is familiar with you want to follow you? These are the non-Newfoundland based tourists who've attended your shows. Well, memories, they love reliving the memories. They love entertainment. Possibly they get inspiration for revisiting for new shows and offerings. I'm not saying that someone who's visited the area and gone to a show would go away, and then a year later they go, wow, like let's go back to Rising Tide Theater. Let me book a trip. It'd be great if they do, but I think it's unrealistic to think that that is the primary driver of their travel. So again, for them, it's really more staying connected to the area and to you. And again, for the strangers, you'd have to be hilarious out of context. They don't know anything about you, but like out of context, they think that your feed is funny, fun, and interesting in order for them to care. So my gut instinct here for this property is to make Facebook your main channel, again, especially because you want the sharing potential. But because your experience is dynamic and interactive, video should be a frequent posting choice for you. And I would suggest at least 50% of the posts that you do should be video. In season, I would recommend posting a minimum of 4 times a week. Again, more if you can do it. I just think in order, you have enough content available to you. And I just think in order to have a nice, robust feed with regular touch points to all the people that are following you, 4 times a week is really good. In the off season, I would suggest that you continue to post a minimum of 1 time a week. I don't know if you're posting in the off season right now. Again, typically seasonal places, especially attractions, typically do not post in the off season, but I think it's really good to keep the momentum going and to keep staying in people's faces. It makes the later sale a lot easier when you've been top of mind with people. I also wanted to point this out, not only to here with Rising Tide, but for everyone, uploading videos right into Facebook is the way to go, as opposed to uploading them to YouTube and then sharing the link on Facebook. The algorithm in Facebook favors what's called native video uploads, which means you're uploading it right to Facebook. It favors that over sharing a link to YouTube. So it's just good to know that you should be uploading your videos right to Facebook. My second part of my gut instinct is to make Instagram a secondary channel that you only maintain through auto posting from Facebook, which, as you saw in the previous example, I felt strongly that those 2 different channels should be distinct, and there really shouldn't be, they should have their own content. In this case, I think it's appropriate, and again, knowing that there probably are limited resources, there's really no need to post organically here on Instagram unless you start to go all out on content. All out is an example I might give in a moment. So don't share all the posts from Facebook to Instagram, just some that would work well, like some video snippets or any big news announcements about new shows coming. I would recommend that you're not necessarily going to use Instagram for marketing, but really just to have a presence on Instagram in case someone favors that over, over Facebook. Like maybe their Instagram users are not Facebook, and at least this way you're not leaving them out. Because of this recommendation, I wouldn't even bother with hashtags and discovery here. I would use it like an online shelf where you just put your news and stories for your followers. This one can have a lot less sort of robust posting. I would keep it relatively current. In season, maybe doing a minimum of 1 time a week on Instagram, and off season, maybe a minimum of 2 times a month. So content ideas, there's going to be 2 different levels of content idea suggestions here, depending on your labor and maybe funding resources available. Here are the simple ones. So if we think again about you having your own newspaper or magazine and what are your departments and columns, showing photos with provocative description captions, descriptive captions, because the still photo of a live show isn't always interesting unless there's context and some kind of story. So that's really important. Video snippets of performances, especially any music or songs, but the dramatic scenes can work really well too. And again, provocative captions, descriptive things, teasers. Costumes and wardrobe, you've got a ton of those, right? So what are the interesting explanations? Are there buckles that are interesting, or belts or handbags or wigs, or lace collars, or like any kind of historical information that you would need to give about some kind of wardrobe thing, or any props, would fall into this category as well. Those are the types of things that are really good to sprinkle in every once in a while on social media. Characters, like spotlighting a character is a way to promote a show. So having a photo or a video of a character, a woman or a man or whatever in character, and then like you're calling them the troublemaker and explaining why they're a troublemaker, or the seductress or the worrier, the life of the party, like that could become a regular thing. Again, I wouldn't say every Tuesday post a character, but like, every 10 posts, if you kind of sprinkle in a character, you could do 2 characters a month, and there, boom, you've got 2 of your posts for the month already done just by choosing characters. Newfoundland sayings and histories, any quotable moments from the shows, like that's really good for engagement in Newfoundland. Like people love to see the comments and the sayings and stuff that matter to them, that resonate with them. Photos of the area, remember, for the regional and away market, occasional posts showcasing the area, shops, points of interest, landscape. I love the idea of doing a where to stay series here. Yes, there will be a lot of tourists in the Trinity area, so you'll get a lot of people from those shows, trying to get people to come from St. John's or Gander or whatever. Like, where should they stay when they come? So highlighting the area lodging. You have a lot of those folks who've taken ads in your programs, and so you want to be highlighting the accommodations that have been kind enough to support you with some advertising dollars. So you could do a regular series on that too. That might be like 1 a week or 1 every other week, depending on how many you have available. And then promotion of the sponsors and funders, beyond boring, I would suggest sort of making it fun and telling their story as well. How could you manage those simple posts? Like spend a day planning out ideas for each of these categories and think about what you're going to need for each. Character stories, you're going to need to have photos of the people or videos of the people, and you're going to need to have descriptions. Trinity area shots, you're either going to have those, you're going to have to share posts from other people, or you're going to have to get out and go take pictures around the area so that you can, share those. There's 2 different, those are 2 very different things that you would need in terms of gathering character versus proximity shots. Create a process or a system that works with your schedule, so you have little chunks of time planned periodically to gather up those photos. I would recommend squirreling away shots for the off season. If there aren't any productions going on, it's going to be harder for you to have a lot of stuff at your fingertips. So take lots of extra shots during the season so that you have a library of them that you can use during the off season. And I would recommend for you guys loosely planning a month's worth of posts at a time. So if we're saying a minimum of 4 times a week, then that's 16 times a month. And honestly, that's not really overwhelming if you choose a mix of existing photos and videos and ones that you need to get, plus sharing the photos and the posts of other folks in your area. Okay, those were the simple ideas. Let's talk about the complex one for just a second. And I don't want to get too crazy about this because you guys who know me know I have these ideas and then I just want to keep talking about them, but we got to focus on social media here. So what if the Rising Tide Theater were to create an ongoing series of videos where characters from the festival get dropped into today's life, interacting with technology and modern equipment and offerings? This could be a really, really fun social media idea, because you've got these people from hundreds of years ago who don't know what an iPhone is, they don't know what the internet is, they've never seen a car, they don't know anything about modern equipment, and now they're suddenly being dropped into today's life and having those experiences and interactions. It's a big production, obviously, but like maybe you could get funding for this, or even just a one-time grant to get it started, or maybe this could be a student film project, because this kind of thing would be perfect for a student film project to like have them figure out the shots, the scripts, like how are we going to do it? How are we going to bring it to life? What's the production So that could be kind of fun. If you were to do this, you might take actors in character to the market, the hardware store, put them in cars, learning how to drive, boats, restaurants, what's a gas station, like those things are all foreign to them. Interacting with modern conveniences, like they've never seen packaged and frozen food in a grocery store. They don't know what a blender is. They don't know what a stove is. Like they don't know what appliances are. Partnering with the businesses where you film so they share the videos on their channels. If you're going to a market or you're going to a hardware store, like making sure that they know, obviously they have to know you're coming, and then you film it, you put it on, they share it, and then you're getting that exponential sharing with the businesses. Doing some kind of a learn to series here, showing them, like having one of them go and cook in a restaurant with a notable chef, learning how to use the modern tools and equipment in a kitchen, maybe learning about laundry and dry cleaning, no more of this. Now, there's actually like washers and dryers, and like, what does that mean? I love the idea of like the internet. Like, how do you explain that to someone from a couple of hundred years? It's hard enough to explain it to people now. I don't know what it would be like trying to explain it to someone from a couple hundred years ago. These could be really like interesting things. You could take these people, as I understand it, a lot of your actors come from other parts of the province as well. So in the off season, they're probably located somewhere else. So this might be an easy way. They can do stuff in their own area. It doesn't necessarily have to be you going on the road, and sort of discovering bigger stores, going to popular places. Imagine like someone from hundreds of years ago walks into a bar on George Street today, or like meets the chef at one of the restaurants down in downtown St. John's. That kind of interaction could be really fun for a social media opportunity. And this is great for cross promotion. I mean, every time you do this in a different destination or a different city or regional, like you're promoting people coming to see the actual pageant or to see any of your shows as well. And I think like Destination Canada and Newfoundland Tourism would probably love to share these types of videos. They're interesting and fun, and they're exactly the type of thing that Newfoundland and Labrador is all about. Like they're very personal, and they could be really, I don't know, like saucy and fun. It's important to note, this is another tip for everyone, Facebook's algorithm favors videos longer than 3 minutes. And again, those that have been uploaded directly to Facebook, not a shared link. So if Facebook is your main channel, like I'm suggesting for Rising Tide, then investing in these little short videos that are at least 3 minutes long would be an excellent investment of your time and resources. Now, how could you manage this? I really like the student filming project a lot. I know I mentioned that already, but if you get funding or a grant for this, you could certainly hire a production company. These can be shot on an iPhone as long as the sound and lighting are good. You can start with a few that are homemade and then grow the production from there if that's appropriate. But regardless, you really need to approach this like you're scripting a new play. But keep in mind that since you'd be working with a lot of non-actors, like your actors might know what they're doing, but when they walk into, the owner of XYZ market or hardware store or restaurant, there's no telling that those people are necessarily good actors. So it's not like you could script them. It's more like having a spontaneous dialogue, and then post editing where you take snippets of what just happened in order to put together a nice like 3 minute or 4 minute whatever video. That kind of thing could be done in post. So then any of the awkward moments where someone who's not an actor didn't do a good job at, like they were trying to deliver a line and it just didn't work, that kind of thing, you can kind of edit all of those things out and make like a nice little. So anyway, that's my take on Rising Tide Theater. All right, Nunatsiavit. Let's talk about that. I love this picture. Let's talk about selling Nunatsiavit. And this is like a completely different scenario than the two that we just mentioned. My assumptions here, Torngat's is probably the star of the destination, but there's so much more in Nunatsiavit. And so like when I say it's the star, I don't mean I think it's the star. I just think it's probably the thing that people talk the most about, that media cover the most in the region, but there really is so much more to be had. I'm assuming that there's no existing system or process for gathering amazing photos from around the region, like from people who live there, from residents, or from any of the tourism workers. I think for a novice tourist, a visit is going to require a really hands-on approach to planning. You can't assume services, infrastructure, and amenities will be available. And the first time I went to their website and I was looking at stuff, it was like, there are no roads between the communities. And like my first thing was like, well, how do I get around? Like, you just assume there are going to be roads. So let's think, if you don't live there and you're not familiar with it, you're going to have a lot of questions. I also assume that there probably aren't a ton of existing resources being put behind the marketing effort, like labor or money. There's not money every year to redo the website, and there's not money to do a ton of marketing. And again, that's my impression based on what I know of working with a lot of other similar regions to Nunatsiavit, and I understand kind of where the money goes. So hopefully those assumptions are on point. My preliminary thoughts here, again, now look at how different this is compared to the other two. You are going to need to target a very particular type of traveler. That's not for you, the finicky vegan who needs high-speed internet access 24/7 and isn't an outdoor person, right? Like those type of people are not the type of people who are going to gravitate toward your region. Your target traveler is not afraid of logistics or what would be perceived as inconvenience from other people. And one segment of your target is going to be the notch on the belt travelers who really like to go where none of their friends have ever traveled. They're looking for places that their friends have never heard of and have never been to. Also, I think that your target could be anywhere globally, but perhaps you're not targeting residents of Nunatsiavut, or even within Labrador. Your away market will probably include Newfoundland and Maritimes, but of course, this could also be, like I said, anywhere. These could be people who live in cities who want a complete escape, people who are not afraid of camping rough, not to say that that's the only type of thing they can do when they're there, but if they're not afraid of that, then that means they're not afraid of inconvenience, they're not afraid of logistics, they're used to being a little bit more independent in the way they travel. I think Northern Lights bucket listers would probably want to go there, outdoor enthusiasts, amateur or professional photographers. One thought I had, which is not a question we need to answer today or even need to answer on this, but if you're a Canadian who lives on the West Coast, or you're from the US, for example, who lives on the West Coast, why should they come all the way over to this side when to them, like that type of experience, they could get it in Northwest Territories or Nunavut or Yukon, like, polar bears, Northern Lights, snow, outdoor, that kind of big, wide open spaces to them, it's like they're all the same. I know they're very different, but to them, it's all the same. So like, why should they choose you and why should they choose following you on social media? Well, the locals, even though you're not targeting them and you're not speaking to them, you're not marketing to them, pride for sure, and maybe in one way to have their photos featured, which I'll mention in a second. Away, people who visited in the past will want to obviously cherish their vacation memories and stay connected. Maybe people who used to live in the area live somewhere else now. And strangers of all of the three examples that we have, I think strangers would be more likely to follow Nunatsiavut on social media than the others. Travel inspiration and jaw-dropping photos, especially the nature, the scenery, and the wildlife, it feels exotic to them. Most likely they don't know how to pronounce it. And it feels like a really sort of aspirational bucket list type trip. So my gut instinct here, which again is very different than what we just said before, is that Nunatsiavut should make Instagram its main channel and posting a minimum of 3 times a week. Again, if you could do more, great. But I would suggest in order to keep this channel healthy, 3 times a week is probably what you need in order to keep it going. I would treat this as if it's Tourism Nunatsiavut's online glossy tourism magazine. That's the way you have to think of it. And I would recommend that you auto post from Instagram to Facebook, just so you have that channel for those who use it. And it's really good for potential sharing. But I wouldn't say, let's put a Facebook strategy together. I would say, let's have an Instagram strategy, and then you can auto share to Facebook just to kind of keep that going. And anything you're posting on Instagram will be relevant for Facebook and for your Facebook audiences. So it's okay. It's not going to hamper you in any way. You're going to need a link sharing tool so potential visitors can easily access frequently asked questions and resources. And I would suggest Linktree for your needs. So here's what I mean by that. Thank you, Destination St. John's, for having a link in your bio. So if, for those of you who don't know, on your Instagram bio, you get 1 link opportunity. And there are link sharing services which essentially allow you to put 1 link here, and when you click on it, it goes to another area that has the opportunity for you to put several links. This way, the way Destination St. John does it, they use link in bio, which is the name of one service. And by doing it, you can see here are their top 3 posts that they most recently posted. And here they are here, you can see them as well. So what happens is if you're on this post and you want to find out more about it, you go here, and then you go to the same picture here. And when you click on it, it brings you to the link of whatever it was that they were trying to describe. Another one, which is called Linktree, and Linktree is the one I would just recommend for Nunatsiavut because I think that that's what you really need. Linktree, I couldn't find a good tourism example right now that had that, so I pulled Selena Gomez. I hope you guys find. When you click on that one, it doesn't bring you to the individual posts. It brings you to a list of other links that you could follow. So for that you could go and access. So I think this one is better for Nunatsiavut because on your Linktree, it's not such a matter of like showcasing what you have for each individual post. It's a matter of, okay, I just saw this amazing photo and I really want to go to Nunatsiavut. What do? I click on that link and what do I get? Where is Nunatsiavut? How do I get there? What are the frequently asked questions? What are the accommodations? You get it? Like, this is all resource information that you're going to want to put there. And that's going to help with conversions. I've seen this picture. I want to go here. How do I go there? Well, I go to this thing and then I'm able to access the information. So you're going to want that in order to get those conversions happening. Some logistical notes here. You guys, New Nazi Audit folks, and anybody else who falls into this category, you're definitely going to want to look at the hashtag thing that I am sending, that Juanita's going to send around afterward. Community hashtags versus branded hashtags. Those are going to help more people discover and follow you. I would definitely recommend you create your own branded hashtags and encourage the residents of New Nazi Audit to use it. They can be featured, or they can send in photos to an email if that's easier, if they're not really using Instagram. Because you're auto sharing to Facebook, I would recommend you put your hashtag in the comments of your post and not in the post caption. I cover that a lot in the PowerPoint, but I'm mentioning it here in case anyone is unfamiliar with that. If you're auto sharing to Facebook and you post on Instagram like this, what happens is it pulls the caption over to Facebook. If you have all these hashtags in here in your caption, it's going to pull those over to Facebook as well. And hashtags really aren't used on Facebook as much, and they kind of clutter it up. So I wouldn't recommend putting them here. I'd recommend doing your post with your caption and then going back in, opening a comment and putting your hashtags in the comment. They still do the job of hashtags, but they don't clutter up the caption. So that's really important. Your departments and columns: Northern Lights, wildlife, landscape and nature, people stories, culture, history, geography, learning. What do I mean by learning? Recipes, crafts, living off the land, how do you make certain baskets, how do you cook certain fish. All those types of things will give you a really rich feed on Instagram and really do that job of making it like a magazine. You are often going to use dramatic and arresting photos to tell the stories you want to share, which can also make the captions really interesting. So for example, you could post a dramatic sunrise photo, and one caption, one way you could do it is to just say breathtaking sunrise over the blah, blah mountain. Period. End of caption. Or another caption could be, each day at sunrise, the Inuit communities do this, that, and the other thing. It could be 2 paragraphs of information about what kind of chore or ritual happens at the beginning of the day. You can use that same photo with 2 different captions and it does 2 different jobs. It's just a matter of like, what are the stories that you want to share? But as long as that photo is really good, it's going to get people to stop in their tracks while they're looking. Always have to remember that the photo or the video is the star of the show. You might want to tell certain history stories, but you first have to think about what photo is going to stop their thumbs and get them to actually read the caption. For you guys, I would definitely recommend using video here for learning opportunities, demonstrations, time-lapse photography. Time-lapse videos are really good for, ice stuff, for polar bears, for northern lights, any of that, sunrises, sunsets. The nature, the scenery, snowmobiling, any activities, and I would say 50-50 here, posting photos versus videos. Your hashtagging and your tagging effort must be super duper strong. Remembering again that sharing is not that easy on Instagram, so making sure that you're tagging the right people and using the official hashtags of the key DMOs, media, like journalists, media, different magazines who might want to feature your stuff. Those are really important, and tagging them where appropriate. I would recommend some advertising budget here to promote one-off posts and do some campaigns. And do you see now why the link sharing service is essential? We really need to make sure you can get some conversions out of that. Finally, how could you guys manage this? I would say you need to plan out each month. I would recommend a minimum of 12 posts. Again, if we say we're doing like 3 times a week, of photos and video, especially so that you can do the justice to the hashtag and tagging research. My guess is you will probably spend 50% of your time planning the content and 50% of your time doing the actual tag research. That's how much time I think that tag research is going to take. I think it's really worth it. I would also recommend knowing a little bit about New Nazi Audit as I do, that you might want to gather up a few months of content for the winter months in advance in case weather prevents you from really getting out and exploring or taking lots of good photos and videos. And I would recommend that you need to be sure that you're showcasing photos and videos from all parts of the region, not just where the tourism office is based, and certainly not just Torngatz, because you really need to make sure you're highlighting all of the region. Okay, phew, so that's it. We whipped through that content. I know it's 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock here where I am. Reminder that you're all going to be getting that presentation and the one on hashtags from HML today after the session. Before we wrap with any questions that you have, 2 things I want to share. One is I will maybe see you all again on May 27th. I'm doing a session for HML on Standing Still is Not an Option in Tourism. That's going to go from 10:30 to 11:30 on May 27th, and or 10 to 11 in some parts of Labrador. And the second thing I just wanted to share is we have a newsletter. I know when I do a lot of these things, people love the inspiration, they love the ideas, and we have a monthly newsletter that especially shares a lot of inspiration on social media, accounts to follow for inspiration, really good ideas of examples of social media that other tourism folks are doing. This whole entire newsletter is about tourism marketing. And so if you want to sign up, there's a bit.ly at the top that you can sign up, or you can go to our website and it's right on the top. You can sign up for the newsletter there. So I wanted to share that with all of you as well, in case you want to connect with us that way and get some good inspiration and tips. And that is it. Here's all my contact information on how to reach me. That is Redpoint's Facebook and Instagram. So I hope you'll connect with us there. I hope that you guys will drop me an email anytime if you have any questions, especially the three folks I used as examples. If you want to ask me any questions or talk anything through, you can always drop me a line and we can have a chat about it. But now I know we're a little late. Anybody who wants to stay, I'm good. Juanita, do we have any questions that people would like me to answer?
Yes, we have a couple questions. I think I'm echoing there.
Am I gonna get in trouble for going over?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So one of them was from Robin, and I don't know if in the linking discussion you just shared, if it was covered, but hoping you could explain a little on how we link. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I probably did cover that. On some of the channels, Facebook, Twitter, you can post a link right in the post, but on Instagram, you can't, which is why a link sharing service is a really good option so that you can provide more ways for people to link to whatever it is you want to go to.
Okay. And from Terry, how important is Google business listings in terms of keeping it updated? Our business picks up a lot of positive reviews on Google and comes up quite frequently in searches.
Yes, Google business listings are very important. In fact, we could have done a whole 2-hour session just about that. So very, very important to keep those listings updated and keep them fresh. Without that, and that this goes beyond social media, this has a lot. I would cover this more in a how to increase visits to your website and how to drive more traffic, more qualified traffic to your website. Not having a good listing and not having a listing that's frequently updated will definitely harm the number of people and inhibit the number of people that come to your website. So yes, I definitely recommend that highly.
Great. That's it for questions. Just some thank yous, of course, and thank you to Christina for joining us today and everybody for attending. I will send out the information following the event. Also keep looking. We still have a few more learning events and other activities planned, and some new announcements to come in the next couple of days about some other events this month. So please keep checking your emails for those. And if you need anything from the Hospitality Newfoundland Labrador team, please contact one of us. So thank you and have a great day.
Bye, guys. Good to see you all.